I made my first 100K way faster than I could have ever expected. The sad reality is that I actually lost that 100K just as fast. And although this is extremely embarrassing and hard to say out loud, I do think that I learned some really important lessons that are worth sharing. So here are the 3 lessons that I learned from making and losing my first 100K. I remember sitting back, just refreshing my portfolio tracker, feeling like I had cracked the code. But the truth is, I had no idea what I was doing, and I was just winging it. Now, although I had a pretty cool job at like a startup at the time and things were going well, that 100K was pretty much all I had. And even worse, it was all in crypto. It wasn't like I was going out spending a bunch of money on like clothes or a car or anything like that at all. It's just that all that money was sitting in an account, and at the time I didn't realize how much it was. I joke with my family about how maybe I should have just bought a car at the time, because quite frankly, at least I would have had the car. And what happened next was devastating. So the first thing is that I didn't tell anyone. And now, in a lot of ways, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, I wasn't trying to brag to anyone, and I definitely wasn't trying to attract attention to myself. But at the same time, this was my first major mistake. You see, I thought that I was the only one going through what I was going through, and that I clearly would have known what was best for myself. You see, we only think about the importance of guidance and mentorship in the way that it can collapse our timeline on the way up. But also that guidance and mentorship can save you a lot of pain on the way back down. One good conversation with the right person could have saved me, quite frankly, much more than 100K, and certainly years of time. It wasn't that I just needed to speak to someone. It's that I should have spoken to someone who actually had experience and who could have at least allowed me to see the options that I had on the table. That was lesson number 1. I needed to drop my ego and seek guidance from someone who had more experience than me. You see, we're always begging for a mentor when things aren't going well. But then we forget the importance of having that same guidance when things are going great. And really, that's the time when you could use that support to maintain your success and take it even further. Here's the second big lesson that I learned. I had money, but I had no system. And money without an actual strategy in place is like having a bucket with a big gaping hole at the bottom. It doesn't really matter how much you have. There's a chance that all of it's just going to leak through, and all of that time and effort that you put in could be worth nothing. A plan could have been as simple as just rebalancing my portfolio once I hit a certain milestone. So let's say that crypto was at 100K. I could take some of that and move it over into stocks, or some of it and move it into a high yield savings account. At the very least, I could have just taken out the principal that I initially invested into crypto and put that into my bank account while the prices of these assets were still elevated. At least at that point, I would have real money in my hands, and I would have a better idea of how much that 100K actually was. And that leads me into the third big lesson that I learned. My first 100K, honestly, was my first 500K. And at the time, I just didn't think that much of it. I mean, I understood at least that I was well on my way to my goals. But in reality, that number of just 100K put me in the top 10% of adults worldwide. And on top of that, I was only 22. I had no idea how much that 100K and quite frankly 500K actually was. To me, it just seemed like nothing. I just wasn't looking at how much money that really was in other ways. Now, I have always had really big goals for myself, and I have also been blessed and have been around a lot of extreme wealth. So at that time, that 500K felt like peanuts. And on a relative scale, well, it was. But on an absolute scale, that money could have done a lot for me. I mean, even if it were just a little mini retirement where I spent the next 5 years traveling the world and getting new experiences. Instead, this is extremely embarrassing, I thought of that money in terms of how many Rolls-Royce Cullinans it would buy. And that number was only one. Now, although I would have never spent the money that way, even thinking like that was completely wrong. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was in a bubble. I was in Miami. There were people who were multimillionaires and even billionaires running around in their Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and having a blast at all the clubs. In the US, 100K or even 500K can feel like absolutely nothing. But the thing is we're always comparing ourselves to the stuff that we see online or to the 1% here in the US. But the truth is, if you step outside and you look around the world, things are very, very different. Here's some data that I found that blew my mind as I was doing some research about this. In 2018, having a net worth of $93,000 was enough to put you in the top 10% globally. In countries like Thailand, Colombia, or Vietnam, you could take that 100K and live for years. I mean, you could travel around, or you could just relax, or you could even use that 100K to give yourself some time and some runway so that you could build a business. But see, I couldn't even imagine that at the time. That's just not what I was thinking about. I was chasing the idea of freedom, but I already had it in my hands. All I knew was that I wasn't even at $1 million yet. And although I understand that in retrospect, at the same time, you have to think about the fact that the whole point of making money is so that we can enjoy our lives. And if money's just sitting in an account, then first, it's not even really real. And on top of that, it's just not doing anything for you. Now, obviously, the way that you allocate to different asset classes and how you treat them is going to be different. A big mistake here was that all of my money was just in crypto. So even if I had decided to just rebalance right into stocks, that could have at least provided me a little bit more of a cushion to where I wasn't going to have to deal with a 90% drawdown in my net worth. But regardless, think about what you can do with the money that you have and how you can use it to live a better life. Because once again, that's kind of the whole point here. It's not that you need to spend money lavishly or anything like that. It's just the idea of what is that money actually worth to you? And what could you use it to do in your life that would make you happy or make someone else happy? Because we really only have so much time here on the planet. My dad took me to a seminar when I was younger. And one of the days, the speaker had an amazing quote. He said, "Time is not money. Time is precious." And I think that's something that's important to think about when it comes to making decisions about our money and also what we do with our time. In summary, here are the 3 major lessons that I learned from making and losing my first 100K. The first is to drop your ego and seek guidance while things are going well. The second is the importance of having a plan. Having money without having a strategy is like having a leaky bucket. Third is to take a second to understand the value of money that you have in your life as you have it. And also to zoom out and look at what you can do with that money on a global scale. And also, don't let materialism blind you from the truth. And don't let your comparison to other people blind you from the truth either. Most people won't ever even see 100K. So you're not behind, you're not broke, and you're not just getting started. If you're anywhere near those kinds of numbers, you're already probably doing very well. And money isn't everything. If you have a roof over your head, you have food to eat on a daily basis, then you're doing really good. If you're trying to build wealth with purpose and you want to make sure that you keep your mind right as you do so, like and subscribe. If you want to go deeper on the topic of investing, how the economy works, and also how technology is impacting the economy, feel free to check out the link in the description to my paid community where we are coming together to discuss these ideas and have a live call every month. I'm Keith D, here to talk everything money and markets. I'll see you next time.